If you want to be the MVP in PvP and PvE in Where Winds Meet, I got the solution for you, which is quit your job. Seriously, just quit your job. Go jobless. Jokes aside, if you want to keep up with the jobless players, you gotta log in and find your goddamn weapon combination and best mystical arts to go with. And I have received a lot of questions regarding best weapon combinations, and today I want to talk about this topic. So I'm going to talk about the best weapon combinations and mystical arts for PvE and PvP in Where Winds Meet. And I've been the MVP a lot in PvE and also almost hit Mythic in PvP, which is the highest rank, even though I'm not jobless. So I hope I know what I'm saying. Before we start, please keep in mind each build in this game is extremely deep and complex, and I could literally make a whole video for each of them individually. This is why I will not give you the full build in this video. I'm not going to talk about the best inner ways or all the animation cancels and perfect combos. Instead, I want to help you to find the best combination you want to go with, because I think most of you have tried multiple weapons, but now you want to reset them and find your best choice. And I want to just help you with that, and you can then go out with your build and look at some pro guides on these builds. And if you like what I'm doing, please consider leaving a like and maybe also a sub on the channel, because that would help me a lot to keep doing what I'm doing. But now let's jump into the game. All right, first up, let's start with PvE. And this section of the video is going to be shorter, and I'm going to tell you why. When it comes to open world PvE in the game, you can technically play all weapon combinations that you can think of. It really doesn't matter which weapon you combine. I think open world PvE can be done with almost every combination. Even if you combine a DPS weapon with a tank weapon, it will allow you to sustain more. Same goes for combining a DPS weapon with a heal weapon. That helps you to sustain in combat. Now, if you would like to go with a heal weapon, I think you should probably start maxing out the Panacea fan first, because it has way more burst heal, and if you ever go into co-op combat, you can also revive your teammates with this weapon. Now, if you would decide to go with a single tank weapon, I think both tank weapons are viable, because the Thundercry blade is going to give you an ability to cast a shield, which is generally really good in PvE. It helps you to sustain a lot. While the Stormbreaker spear has an ability to cast a shock, which ultimately is for damage reduction in combat, but it also has an ability to knock down enemies, and this also works with small bosses. So I have played the first complete region by combining a DPS weapon with the Stormbreaker spear actually, and I think it was a great combination. It worked really good. Now, when combining two DPS weapons, I really recommend to go with those that fit well together. Talking Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear, which is a combination. Talking Infernal Twinblades and Mortal Rope Dart, which is a combination. And talking Strategic Sword and Heaven Quaker Spear, which also is a combination. These three combinations are meant to be used together, because both DPS weapons favor each other with deep mechanics. However, this is just the solo content of the game. Now, you probably hit 51, 56, and you start participating in the MMO content. Now, there's one important rule. Because you queue for either DPS or heal or tank, which ultimately means you should focus on one of these aspects. So if you queue for DPS, people will expect you to play two DPS weapons. If you queue for heal, they will expect you to choose two heal weapons, which is Panacea Fan and Soulshade Umbrella, because your job is to keep everyone alive. And if you only have one heal weapon and one DPS weapon, you take away DPS jobs, and they will do that. You don't have to do that, but you will be able to heal less, which ultimately might make the whole raid fail. And if you are the main tank, you should probably play with both tank weapons, because the main tank is going to be chosen from the very beginning, and some of the boss mechanics will always be targeted at the main tank. And some of that you will just have to tank. And if you are just half a tank, it's gonna be problematic. So when it comes to PvE endgame and min-maxing, the ultimate answer is to click on these names over here and really just go with one of these recommended combinations, which is Bellstrike Splendor with Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear, which is mostly for shooting waves from afar, and when the enemy is broken, you use the Nameless Spear to deal a lot of damage with a hold attack. Or which is Bellstrike Umbra, which is Strategic Sword and Heavenquaker Spear. Both rely on bleed, and your ultimate goal is to apply bleed with the Strategic Sword. If you have 5 stacks of bleed, you switch to Heavenquaker Spear, and the first ability of Heavenquaker Spear will give you damage buffs depending on how many hits it does. And if the enemy has 5 stacks of bleed, each hit will count as 2 hits, which stacks up a higher buff. And then you go back to Strategic Sword and just pop the damage. The third DPS comp is Silkbind Jade, which is the full ranged comp, meaning Inkwell Fan and Ninefold Umbrella. Now this is the kiting comp where you just damage bosses from afar. I think this comp is a little more complicated when it comes to solo open world PvE, because the boss will always go for you, but if you go into a multiplayer PvE, you will be able to deal a lot of damage while the boss is not focusing you. So it really shines in the MMO PvE aspect, but it's gonna be harder in the single player PvE aspect. And the last DPS comp is Infernal Twinblades and Mortal Rope Dart. Basically, you want to hold heavy attack on your Rope Dart to activate certain buffs. Then you want to use the second ability of Rope Dart to summon rats, which will be in the ground, and they will trigger whenever you hit the enemy with light attacks, which is the strength of the Infernal Twinblades. So you switch back to Infernal Twinblades and then you engage the enemy and do as many light hits as possible, and this will trigger the rats as well, which will ultimately deal a lot of damage. I think Strategic Heavenquaker or Infernal Twinblades Mortal Rope Dart are the strongest DPS combinations with the highest amount of PvE damage in a short amount of time, followed by Nameless Sword, Nameless Spear, and Inkwell Fan, Ninefold Umbrella. These two combinations can also deal a lot of damage, but I think they are a little behind the other two. Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear will specifically shine a lot when you have upgraded your inner ways to the last levels, but this will take us a year at least. But if you hit the tier 6 inner arts from Nameless Sword and Nameless Spear, you could technically deal the most PvE damage in the game, but this will take us a year to get there. Now, obviously, we only have one tank comp, so there is no better tank comp. You want to shield yourself with Thundercry Blade. You want to give yourself damage protection from the Stormbreaker Spear, and you want to face tank the bosses. You don't parry a lot, you just face tank them with a shield, charge your attacks, deal as much damage as possible, and that's the way how to play the tank. It's literally not that complicated. However, one thing you need to know is that you should use the hold heavy attack from the Stormbreaker Spear before you shield yourself with Thundercry Blade, because the shield is going to be improved. And when it comes to the heal set, there's also just one in the game right now, so there's no better or worse. So you really just want to utilize the whole moveset of these two weapons. Use the first ability on Soulshade Umbrella to AoE heal, then throw it up with the second ability, switch to the fan, and use the fan heal abilities. And it's important to keep your burst heal, specifically your first ability on the fan, for certain mechanics in boss fights, because it's gonna help you survive damage mechanics. Just to finish the PvE topic, I really recommend to go with any of these recommended PvE combinations from the game. It is also important because if you farm inner ways, it's gonna be easier if you focus on one of these paths, because it will help you to make a choice when you have to open chests. Because, for example, if I am full tank, I will obviously go with the Stonesplit chest for inner way scripts. But if I combine a Bellstrike weapon with a Stonesplit weapon, it's harder for me to decide which chest I should choose to max out my inner ways. So it's easier to choose the perfect chest for you to farm inner way script. Now, when it comes to mystical arts for PvE, let me just tell you which of the mystical arts are the best to use. Now, at first, Meridian Touch is really important for some boss mechanics, so you should have it in your set. And the same goes with Cloud Step. It allows you to engage the enemy whenever the boss uses a mechanic that gets him to the other side of the room. You can go there pretty quickly, but it's also important for some boss mechanics. Whenever there is a mechanic where you have to use these abilities, the game will show it on screen. Celestial Seas can be used against some bosses like Lucky 17, for example, to snack away his poison blade in the second phase. But other than that, it's really situational. It's just for very, very few bosses. I think Lion's Roar is an ability that you can use. It deals good AoE damage. Leaping Toad can also be used in PvE, but I think it shines more in PvP. It deals good damage, also deals poison damage, but there are stronger skills in the game. Ghostbind is really just useful if you deal with like very easy mobs in large groups, if you go farming, for example, but it's not going to be helpful in the MMO raid content of the game and bosses, for example. Guardian Palm deals decent AoE damage, but ultimately it's also an ability that is not as great for PvE as other abilities. Flaming Meteor, the fire horse, takes a lot of vitality. I would not really use it in a PvE set unless you deal with large groups of small enemies. It almost deals no damage against bosses, so it's not really worth it. But if you deal with lots of small enemies, it can be worth it, but other than that, also not one of the best abilities in the game. However, Free Morph is an ability that deals a lot of damage, so it's worth to keep it in your PvE set. The same goes with Wolf-like Frenzy. It deals a lot of damage against bosses and also against their posture, and if they have an unstable poise, you deal even more damage. Next up we have Soaring Spin. This deals a lot of burst damage with just a single slash. You can just dash through the boss, deal a lot of damage. I would personally cancel the second hit of this ability, and you can do that by pressing parry before the second hit. So if you do this ability and then press parry, you're not going to do the second hit. Dragon Breath is very good against PvE enemies, deals a lot of damage and also deals fire damage, which is damage over time, and it gives you the Intoxicated status, which allows you to instantly cast Dragon Poet. Now, if you have both of these abilities on tier 3 upgrades, you will even do fire explosions with each hit of Drunken Poet when the enemy is burning. So using these two abilities combined in PvE is ultra strong. One of the best mystical arts in PvE. Golden Body is actually worth it in PvE. It gives you a shield which helps you to survive more attacks from bosses. I think it's a great ability. Ghostly Steps, I mean, dodges will cost less endurance. It also increases your untargetable duration, but honestly, it uses a lot of vitality and it only lasts 20 seconds and has a cooldown of 60 seconds. Now, if you get to upgrade it a lot, maybe it gets worth it, but right now I don't think it's worth it. Honking Havoc is interesting because it can slow down time against bosses. However, this only works in solo PvE. If you go into any kind of multiplayer PvE, this is not going to work anymore, so probably not worth it. But that is it about PvE. But when it comes to PvP in the game, you can actually combine weapons, and some of the strongest combinations in the game are combined weapons that are not following a recommended path. So let's go into all the good combinations in the game. Now, important for this section is I'm not going to talk about all the combinations. There is far too much that you could technically use. I'm going to talk about those used by high elo players, so the strongest ones in our patch right now. So for example, Twinblades and Rope Dart, it is a strong combination. It can be used, but in high elo you won't see that a lot because while it deals a lot of damage in PvE, the combo potential is not as insane as other weapon combinations. All right, so the first combination that I personally use because it's extremely strong and also kind of handless is Strategic Sword and Infernal Twinblades. The combo potential on this build and also the damage potential on this build is insane. Now, let me just show you a single combo, and this whole thing is a true combo and no one can escape unless they use Serene Breeze, and you will see what I mean with long and strong combos. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that there is an automatic CC break in the game, which is not Serene Breeze, and this happens after 10 seconds. So if you hit the enemy for 10 seconds straight and they couldn't move, they will automatically be freed out of the combo. And you will see that with an animation, which looks like Serene Breeze, and you should keep your combo finisher, the execution, until this point, and then you should use it. Or alternatively, if the enemy is not broken, you go into something with super armor, like the Fire Breath, for example. The cool thing about this comp is that you have a lot of movement. So you have the strategic sword dash, which ultimately can be cancelled and recasts. And you also have 3 dashes from the dual blades, which make you really mobile and aggressive at the same time. And you can also play a lot with animation cancels to fake a lot, try to find the right engage, try to chain into other abilities, and you know the drill. Now, I can't show you the perfect combos for each combination, but if you want to know the perfect combo for this one, you want to find any sort of engage, no matter if it's the dual blade dash or if it's the second ability from the strategic sword. But whenever you find an engage, let's say it's the dual blade dash, you want to keep going with light attacks, switch to strategic sword, start with the first ability, but don't use the second cast that you get through the inner art. Instead, after like doing the first ability, you want to go into heavy hits. You want to do the full heavy hit combo, and then you want to switch back to dual blades with the switch weapon ability and keep doing dual blade combos. It's really not that hard. So again, it will look like this. You just saw that he got pushed out a few times of the combo. This is just in Guild Arena. Guild Arena is a little buggy, so whenever you feel like your combo didn't go through like it should be, that is because of the Guild Arena. Don't worry, it's gonna work in normal Arena, but unfortunately Guild Arena is a little buggy. And one cool thing about the dual blades is the heavy attack, which is a mode that you can use. You can go into it and then you can literally just spam auto attacks. The combo is gonna be really strong and you cannot be cancelled. Like, you have super armor as long as you are in this mode, which is completely broken. Now, another combination that a lot of players use is Nameless sword with dual blade. The good thing about the Nameless sword is you have the poke potential to use your second ability to just poke from afar without having to engage. It's pretty fast, so harder to parry, and people just try to annoy you with that. And the second good thing is that you have an engage ability that is really strong, but you need to find the right opening to use it. For example, if the enemy fails his engage, you want to counter engage him with the engage ability from the Nameless sword. Now, the engage ability comes with a combo. However, this is not a true combo. That is important to know. So let me show you the normal combo. If I hit it and I keep pressing Q, this is the normal moves that you will do, but this is not a true combo. Now, what you want to do is you want to cancel after the first hit by pressing parry, and then do the last hits of this combo, and then swap into dual blades and do the whole dual blade rotation. So you want to engage, hit once, cancel, hit twice, and then switch the weapon, which is going to look like this. Now, you see him being pushed back, but this is just the Guild Arena, so this would have been a true combo. So what you want to do is you want to really just annoy the enemy with the waves, the second ability. Keep doing that. Honestly, don't use the hold attacks from the Nameless sword because it's easy to parry and it's also going to make you vulnerable. So really just use the second ability to annoy them. Find a good opening with the first ability, cancel that, and go into the combo. And if you want to have it a little easier, you can technically just hit the engage from the Nameless sword and instantly swap into dual blades. That is the easier way. So you just do this, into this, and to this. Go back and disengage again. It's a great engage, disengage comp. Now, the next combination that you see a lot in high elo PvP, and this is surprising to me, is the dual ranged DPS comp. And trust me, it is the comp I hate fighting the most. Nothing comes close. Honestly, nothing comes close. I hate fighting these people. It doesn't deal an insane amount of damage, but it's really just annoying. The good thing is that whenever the enemy engages, you have this back jump ability from the fan, and this wall is not just blocking projectiles, it's blocking movement entirely. So you can also just wall people in against the arena wall. But it's also an ability that can be used whenever your enemy is failing his true combo. You can instantly get out of it. It really fits into any small gap. Another cool thing that almost no one knows is you have this uppercut ability that you can chain into with like heavy attacks in the air, which looks like this. This is what you want to do a lot because it's your like annoying poke damage. You disengage after that. You just try to hit this as much as possible. Now, what many people don't know is you can actually use Meridian Touch and then chain into this ability from afar. It will cast from ranged. So you can really just press Meridian Touch and press the ability and it's gonna work on the enemy, which is crazy. It's fast. It requires a very good reaction time to parry that. However, it can be countered by just holding block. So technically, if your enemy is playing very defensive, it's not going to work. But if you have someone who's just running around, not holding block, it's technically a good thing to do. So when it comes to the umbrella in this whole comp, the most important thing of it is the stun, which is the first ability. So if you hit it, the enemy is going to be stunned and you can then hold light attack and shoot them for a while until the stun is over, obviously. If you have the right inner way, you're gonna have 2 charges on the stun, so you can stun them. If the stun is over, stun them again. So it's gonna be very important. However, it's not gonna be used that much until you hit the tier 3 of the inner way Blossom Barrage, because it's going to make the cast of your stun way quicker. Let me show you the comparison, because my friend over there, he already has tier 3. So if I use it, it's going to be like a little slower and it's easier to dodge that. Keep in mind, you can't parry it. You have to dodge it. Now, if he uses it, it's going to be faster. And that is the point where the umbrella really comes online. Another good thing is the second ability of the umbrella. If you cast it, the umbrella is automatically shooting projectiles. What you want to do is you really want to pressure the enemy then, because they want to parry that, but you don't want them to parry it. So you want to use Mystical Arts, you want to use your uppercut, you want to pressure the enemy as much as possible while the umbrella is up, because then you will deal an insane amount of damage. Specifically because having the umbrella up also increases the damage of your air combos, so you really want to hit the uppercut and do the air combos while the umbrella is flying next to you. One thing you need to know about this comp is it heavily relies on mystical skills. So the comp doesn't deal a lot of damage, but it's really annoying to fight against, because specifically if you use the uppercut from the fan, for example, you can teleport back to the original location. So you just really want to poke, to annoy, and whenever you find a good opening, use mystical skills at the right time. Another thing that you should know is that if you use the stun from the umbrella on short range, it's harder to dodge because of ping. So you might see this stun actually miss you, but it's still going to hit because of ping. So you want to do the uppercut, you don't want to do the air combo, instead you want to go into the umbrella stun. It's not impossible to dodge it, don't get me wrong, but it's harder to get the timing right because of ping. It's just natural. Another combination that a lot of players use is sword and sword, and I use that myself for a very long time, because you have the damage potential and the combo potential of the strategic sword, which comes with a lot of abilities that you can combo well, and you also have the engage and the disengage of the Nameless sword. So the poke that I just spoke about, this second ability that you can always like use just to annoy people, and the engage that you can use at the right time whenever the enemy is making a mistake. So the perfect combo people use the most is use Nameless sword engage whenever the enemy does a mistake, chaining into strategic sword and then doing combos with it, which is going to look something like that. So something you have to keep in mind when you play sword is that your heavy attack combo is a true combo. So after chaining to the strategic sword, using the first ability, not using the recast, I do heavy attack combos. And then I can just go back to the Nameless sword and do heavy attack combos again. It's important to know you can't do heavy attack combos into heavy attack combos. You need a weapon swap in between. Otherwise, it's not going to be true. And you should ultimately, of course, end the combos with the backslash if the enemy is not executable. If the enemy enemy is executable, you should use the execution. But it's really just a annoy enemy from afar, wait for the right moment to engage kind of comp. Another thing that you should know is you can also chain mystical arts into your combos. So one thing that a lot of players do is if they do the strategic sword combo, so first ability into heavy attack, they end this combo with free morph, which is a pretty strong mystical art. It's very well comboable and deals a lot of damage. Now, another weapon that many players in high elo use frequently is the Nameless spear, and that has one specific reason, and that is the first ability. The first ability is a stun, and the important thing is it's really fast, and it also is a gold hit, which means you cannot parry or block it. And it's gonna look like this, and you have a lot of opportunities after that. Now, you can use this weapon with any kind of DPS weapon because you really want to get yourself an opening with this stun and then chain it into your DPS weapons or into strong mystical arts, because if the enemy is standing around for 3 hours, obviously you can do a lot of after that. But another thing that is really strong on the Nameless spear is the hold attack, which looks like this. Now, what many people don't know is that if you hit the second ability first and then go into hold, it's gonna be fast right from the start. So for example, you want to stun, hit the second ability and then hold. And the stagger is kind of hard to get out of. So if you happen to use this in combat, it's really strong. Now, if you time it with breaking the posture of the enemy, it's just insane. Let me show you how this looks. Keep in mind the damage was low because I have the weapon on level 1. I'm not playing it. If you would have leveled up this martial arts, the damage would be crazy. Combining this with any kind of DPS weapon is, for combos, is just crazy. It's really strong, but your brain game needs to be good because enemies will eventually understand when you are going to use the stun and they are going to dodge it. So you really have to kind of find a way to use it in situations where they don't expect you to use it. And you can also use it in combos, obviously. So if you ever get a combo starter with a strategic sword, for example, or with a nameless sword, you can always weapon swap and then go into the stun. Outside of weapon combinations, I wanted to give you another tip that I completely forgot in my last PvP video, because you don't always have to use the weapon swap ability to swap weapons, and sometimes you shouldn't, because just using the mouse wheel to swap weapons or on controller pressing the down button is way faster. Let me show you why. If I would use this ability on the strategic sword and I would go into weapon swap, I wouldn't hit. I cannot keep this combo up. Until this animation is over and I really get into like dodging to the enemy, it's taking too long. He can get out of it. However, if I change the weapons with the mouse wheel instantly and go into the dash from the dual blades, it can be a true combo. So I use this, weapon swap instantly, and I'm way faster. And that is important for a lot of mechanics in the game, so keep this in mind. Another thing that I see a lot in high legend and early mythic rank is actually the double tank comp. Now, the first thing about this comp is it is tanky as hell. So I have broken postures of these players without touching their health bar. So technically, if you're playing dual blades, for example, you're gonna need 300 hits or something to kill them. Another disgusting thing that these players do is you have this ability to pull enemies closer. We call it the suck. And they chain this into death-breaking abilities. So people are naturally trying to parry your suck because what should they do? They are trying to do something to defend against this. So you just want to pull them closer and go into a Deathbreaker. It will work against most players. Like, very good ones are probably gonna expect it, but it's gonna work against most players. So you want to pull them closer and then go into a Deathbreaker. It's annoying, it's disgusting, I hate it. The only comp that you are absolutely going to struggle against is the full ranged comp, because they are just gonna never come close. They're gonna stay ranged the whole time, so you're not gonna have a good time. And also technically the nameless sword comp, because they are practically doing the same. They are also gonna use the second ability to shoot waves and rarely engage, only at the perfect time. But other than that, this combination, a lot of tankiness, you give yourself damage protection, you give yourself the shield, and then you just wanna be annoying as hell. And most of the normal attacks even have like super armor, so if you charge the attack on the Blade, for example, the enemy can't stop you from that. So you have super armor, you can just straight up walk to them. You don't even have to use it. You can even cancel it when you are close to them and do something else. You don't have to use this attack. You can just have the super armor, go close, and instead like go into a mystical art or something. And whoever says tank is weak, a lot of tanks are in the top 50. There you have it. One comp that is not used very often, but I have seen it in high elo, and even Gamebreaker God uses it, is Strategic Sword and Inkwell fan. And I think it makes sense. You have the very quick engage from the Inkwell fan with the Meridian Touch, which can be annoying. You also have the very good disengage whenever your enemy makes a mistake with the Wind Wall and also the teleport ability. You can poke from afar, but you can also perform really well close combat with the Strategic Sword and pull off long combos. But this one is really stylish, but also requires a lot of skill. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily something you should start with. And sometimes you also see people using heal weapons in PvP. I have seen a few in the very high elo, specifically because when it comes to the Soul Shade umbrella, you can use the first ability to increase your damage by 15%, which is quite a lot for 8 seconds. And also you can just let it fly next to you and switch to another weapon and get some healing over time. Now, I have specifically seen people combining this 15% damage increase with extremely strong mystical arts to kind of one-shot people sometimes. I mean, not one-shot, but deal a lot of damage in a very short time frame. Okay, lastly, let's talk about mystical arts and which of them are good in PvP. Now, first and foremost, your Serene Breeze. It's necessary. You should never play without it. It gets you out of combos. So whenever the enemy is hitting me with a combo, I just press Serene Breeze and I get out of it, and I also shock them to kind of counter-engage them. Of course, keep in mind they also have this ability, so you have to win the brain game, of course. Next up, another very good ability is Soaring Spin. It's really fast. It tracks the enemy movement, so they have to dodge it or parry it. It deals an insane amount of damage with just one hit. And if you cancel the second hit, it can also work in combos, which is this ability. But I highly recommend to cancel the second hit. Next up, we have Meridian Touch. I think it's great for PvP. Sometimes you just use it to poke. As you know, we have Heavenly Counter, which will be triggered whenever you are hit when you block. And you want to get this out of people, because when they use it and get hit again, they can't use it right away. So sometimes when people are very defensive and they keep defending, you use Meridian Touch from afar to basically poke this Heavenly Counter out of them. Then you just wait until it ends, and the next time you engage, they will not have Heavenly Counter ready. Another great reason is you can execute people from afar with it. So if their stance is broken, use Meridian Touch, spam the execute button, and it's going to work from ranged, which is insanely important. Whenever you fail the execution from close range and they run away, this is your safeguard to still execute them. However, if they keep jumping, it's going to be hard. If they do a triple jump, sometimes it's not going to work. So if you ever get your stance broken and you want to try to not be executed, try to triple jump. The next ability that I already spoke about, which is really good in any sort of combo, is Free Morph. So it's this ability. It deals a lot of damage, and it also is really good in combos. Another mystical art that is extremely strong actually is the Frog. The Frog is crazy. It can be used in combos. It has super armor. It deals a lot of damage. It deals poison damage, which if you time it right, it does an explosion. If you just watch the enemy, you see the debuff ending, it will explode, which stagger them for a short second. If you use this timing, for example, with a Nameless sword engage, it's crazy. And as you just saw, there was a second explosion. So if you level up your Frog ability, it will explode 2 times, which gives you 2 possible openings. And it's also great if you are under pressure. If you are attacked, you can technically spam this button and you will eventually find an opening. With super armor, with a lot of damage, it's great. Whenever you are attacked, I would rather not spam parry. I would instead try to spam the Frog. it's great. So the next mystical arts that are really important is Dragon's Breath and Drunken Poet. These abilities really come online when they are tier 3, so you should upgrade them as quickly as possible. Because if someone is ignited from Dragon's Breath and you hit them with Drunken Poet, it's gonna cause explosions, which deal a lot of damage. But it also works the other way around. So if you hit someone with Drunken Poet and then use Dragon's Breath, it's also going to trigger an explosion. What's also important is that in order to cast them, you need the status of Intoxicated. I recommend just pressing Drunken Poet once, because it will drink something and then you are intoxicated. This status lasts for 30 seconds and you can technically use Fire Breath now without drinking, which is way faster. And same goes for Drunken Poet. You can use it without drinking. The good thing about Dragon's Breath is it has super armor, so you can use it whenever you think the enemy is going to engage. So if I expect him to engage, I will cast this ability and he will not stagger me. Instead, he will be staggered and he will also get the fire damage. And now I go into Drunken Poet, and as you can see, I'm doing the explosions, which is crazy, deals an insane amount of damage and also a lot of posture damage. It's insanely strong. And the cool thing about Drunken Poet is it has a lot of hit protection. So even though the enemy might attack you, you can still spam it and you shouldn't be interrupted. There are some things that can interrupt it, but most things can't. So it's a really strong ability overall. And if you want a personal recommendation, use the execution when the posture of your enemy is down and then use Fire Breath. Best combination. Another thing that is extremely important is either Talent Strike or Yaksha Rush. Because if your enemy is a very defensive player and he's holding block, I can't get through it. With Yaksha Rush or Talent Strike, you break block and now watch his posture bar. More than half of the posture bar, deal a lot of damage. So this is something that should always be in your kit. If someone is playing very defensive and you don't have it in your kit, you have a problem. Now, when it comes to Cloud Steps, I don't really recommend it because I think it's easy to counter it. Like, it's very obvious. It takes a lot of time. So I can literally just divine counter it and punish the whole thing. So it's not really worth it. If you are facing umbrella players, it can be useful because you can get them down out of the air if they are flying around. But other than that, I don't really see a usage for it. And lastly, I think another ability that you can use in combos is Guardian Palm. It also has the version that you can use from the air, which does a huge AoE attack, but honestly it's too easy to dodge it because you see the animation, it takes a lot of time. But if you use the ground version, it can be good in combos, but I don't think it's very strong. But that is really it when it comes to mystical arts and those that are like good in PvP. Now, I see a lot of people that like Flaming Meteor because it just looks cool, but it's too easy to dodge it. It doesn't deal a lot of damage, but it might be useful in large scale PvP. So when we're talking about 30 versus 30 guild wars and you are not focused and you use that against large groups of enemies, it could work, but that's it. That's really it. So one thing I wanted to say is technically in PvP, everything works. I have seen people in like high elo PvP with some crazy weird builds like dual blades and tank Mo blades. So anything can work, but if you are not jobless like me, and if you don't have 4 hands, you should maybe go with the sets that I recommend, because they are obviously the strongest ones on the patch right now, because most people in high elo use it. But you can still experiment and try to find something that you like. And if you have a secret combination that I don't know about, share it in the comment section below. I would love to hear about some combinations that I have not thought of. Now, if you want to find out more about future patches of the game, I made a whole video about future big updates that we will get in the next 12 months. So check it out. It's a cool video. And if you don't have the time for it, thank you for watching this one. I see you in the next video. Have a great day. See ya.